Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today is going to be a vlog type video. So basically I'm going to take you guys to work with me and show you guys what it's like in a day of a dental assistant slash orthodontic technician. And yeah, I'm going to give you guys like a brief kind of video on my everyday tasks. So the office that I work at does general dentistry, which is like fillings, extractions. We do crowns, we do dentures, anything like that. We do just kind of general dentistry, but we also do orthodontics. So basically my job for most of the day is working with kids with braces, and I also assist in like fillings, extractions and stuff like that. I kind of just bounce back and forth and just help out wherever I can. But the majority of my patients are kids with braces, adults with braces. But yeah, guys, stay tuned if you guys are interested in being a dental assistant or just want to know what. We're gonna use the floss to get it right in between those two teeth. And we're gonna slowly move it up until we hear a pop, just like that. And you should be able to see the spacer on the top. And then we pull off the floss. And that's it. So that spacer will create room for our bands, which is the next step in braces. Hey guys, so we are gonna be doing lower brackets on our awesome patient here. Alright, so what she's putting on there right now is called pumice, and it's kind of like sand. It looks like sand, but basically it's just going to give us a nice, clean, rough surface to start on. So it's just going to remove any food, anything that she has on her teeth, before we actually place the bracket. And so the next step would be etch. And so this is just going to open the pores of the teeth so that when we place a bond and the brackets on there, it has a nice surface to stick onto. And so this stuff is really, really sour. It's really nasty tasting. And so we try to tell the patient to stay open as long as possible to keep their tongue back. And so we keep this on there for approximately 30 seconds. And then we rinse off. And so once we rinse off and wash it off, and that's the same thing. Once we rinse it off and dry it off, the teeth will look chalky. So they'll look, you guys will see it in just a second. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can tell very much, but the teeth are starting to look chalky, and that's how you know they're dry. So she's just going to keep drying until we're pretty sure that there's no more water on there left. And it's super important that the tooth is dry before we place the bond, or else the bond will not work if there is saliva, water, anything like that on there. And so once we place this bond, we don't want to get it wet because the glue will not stay on there. So sometimes when we place brackets, especially premolar brackets, sometimes the brackets will get wet because of their gums. Sometimes they just have really swollen gums, and it's kind of hard to get the bracket on there because your gums are so swollen, and it just makes the bracket wet. And so once we cure it and everything, it'll just pop right off. So that's why it's super important to keep the tooth dry. But these are the brackets we're going to be using, and we are only going to be placing brackets from canine to canine. And once we begin to place the brackets, the glue that we're using, if we keep the light on it, it'll cure the brackets and we won't be able to adjust them. So that's why she moved the light out of the way so that it wouldn't cure the brackets. And so we usually use pencil marks to kind of give us a better idea of where the bracket should be placed, but we did not in this case. So we're just going to place the brackets and we're going to come back and adjust them. And so you want to have them centered, and the colorful parts, those blue and red that you guys see, those are called jigs. And you want those jigs to be pointing to the very highest point of the back of the tooth. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but you'll see in just a second when she uses a mirror to look at it. And so she's also just going to press these all the way down, and you also want the jig to be right up against the tooth. You don't want there to be any space between the jig and the actual tooth. Or else the bracket won't be in the right place. And so now she's using the mirror to make sure that the jigs are in the right position before she cures everything. And believe it or not, if just one bracket is off, it can make the tooth look very different than all the rest. So that's why it's super, super important that when placing the brackets, they're on correctly. And Dr. Minzer will come in, check them, make sure everything is okay before we cure anything. And so Dr. Minzer will basically do the same thing that she's doing right now. Just kind of checking them out, making sure they're in the right position, and give us the okay to cure. And so this does take a little bit of time because we want to be super precise when putting these brackets on there. And so that's why you see us, taking like 2-3 minutes on just making sure the brackets are on there correctly. And I think she's going to go ahead and cure them. Yep. And so I always try to cure kind of above it so that I don't move any of the brackets, and then get a little bit closer to the actual brackets once I cure. And also, you don't want the patients to look at this light because it can hurt your eyes too. Patients and yourself, you really don't want to look at this light. But yep, once everything is cured, you can take your Matthews and start removing those jigs. And now the brackets are in place. So now we're going to go ahead and put the wire on. And the wire that we're using is 016. So this is just kind of the, how do I explain it? How heavy the wire is. So how thick the wire is. And so they get to pick their colors. And she picked 4 different colors. And we're just putting the donuts. So these colors are called donuts. And they keep the wire down. They keep it in place. But yeah, that's it to the brackets.
So we're going to measure these on. Okay, so I come from behind. Place it in and make sure that her full arch fits in there. So it looks like this one's going to be good. Bottom arch. Make sure that her arch fully fits and she's not like scraping on front or top or bottom. Okay. All right. So with this size, we usually use 2 scoops of alginate, and this is what our alginate looks like. When we're doing this, we kind of have to work really quickly once we pour the water in because this sets really fast. So I'm just gonna get this ready. 2 scoops for the top and 2 scoops for the bottom. Okay. So you also use 2 lines of water. Okay. And our patient also wanted flavoring, so we put a few drops of this. Mix it. Put the top over it. Place it in our mixer. And this is going to be for our top arch. And remember, we have to move really quickly, otherwise this stuff sets pretty quick. Okay, make sure you pour it all over your tray. Okay, you have your patient open real big. Make sure you also place your lip over the tray. It takes about 30 to 60 seconds to set, so you just got to be patient for a little bit. With this material, it goes from turning purple to pink to white. Once it's white, it means it's set. You can see right here that it's white, so we can go ahead and take it out. And she's gonna have...
Alright, so we've taken the impression, and so now we are going to pour it up. And so the way that I like to do my pour-ups and the way that I was taught by my doctor was to make each layer a little bit thicker than the last. So the first one is going to be very, very thin. And it's going to just chase out any of that water that's in there, because we did wrap this up in a paper towel because we did not get around to pouring it up until later on into the day because we were pretty busy. And the water just keeps it from shrinking and drying up. And so we're just going to chase out any water with our mixture. And so the next mixture is going to be a little bit thicker than the last. So we're going to add a little bit more stone and water because I needed more material. And basically, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pour it in on one end and chase out that thin material. And so this method is pretty foolproof. We were struggling a lot with our pour-ups, and our doctor actually showed us this technique, and it helped a lot. Our pour-ups are pretty great every single time. Alright, so now that it's full, pretty much towards the top, you can go ahead and make your base. And we want our base to be a lot thicker than the rest, and so I'm adding more material because I didn't have enough for both of them. And so another thing you can do if your mixture is too wet is just take a paper towel, pour your mixture onto that paper towel and pat it dry, and it just removes any excess water that you have. Instead of adding more stone, this is another way to adjust your mixture. And so I'm just going to pour that base on there, and after that I'm going to flip it over and set it down and let it dry. We're going to give it a couple hours to dry before we pull it apart. But that's basically it to pouring up our models. These are going to be made into retainers, so we don't need the base to be too thick or anything like that. If they're going to a lab or something, we try to make them a little bit thicker. But since these are just for retainers, we don't need them to be that thick. Alright, so we've taken apart the models. I didn't get to show you guys this 2 steps before this. I didn't get enough time to record. But before this, we used the retainer material and we melted it onto the model, and then used a handpiece and a 557 burr to cut out the retainer. And once we did that, we can pull it apart, and this is what we get. And then we just use this machine to kind of trim it down, remove any excess material on there, and smooth it out. I like to go in between each tooth and just trim it down as much as I can. And then I like to go back and just smooth everything out so that nothing is bothering them when they wear this retainer. And so they're going to be wearing this retainer for the rest of their lives. So I try to do the best I can when making these retainers. And that's pretty much it.